You only change when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. In Luke chapter 5, Jesus is eating and drinking with the disciples, and the whack-a-mole Pharisees have arrived, and they said, Jesus, why don't your disciples pray and fast? And Jesus' response was, while the bridegroom is with them, they don't need to, but the bridegroom's going to be taken. You say, what in the world does that mean, Pastor Dan? It means when Jesus doesn't seem present, you're supposed to pray and fast. And there was coming a time in the disciples' lives when Jesus would be removed. They didn't want him to go, but he did go. Do you know what Matthew chapter 6 says about praying and fasting? When you pray, when you fast, and it's going to follow up when you give. Fasting in the Bible is the spiritual H-bomb. Some of you feel dry as the Sahara Desert. Others of you need the tender touch of heaven. Some of you right now have a stranglehold in your life, and you are absolutely under the stronghold of the evil one. You need God to intervene. If you need that, my friend, you need to put together prayer with fasting. In Daniel chapter 9, Daniel's going to say, I decided to seek the Lord with prayer and fasting. And that's what he did. Fasting is all over the Bible. I don't know why it's not taught more. Daniel fasted. He fasted upon his son's death. Moses fasted. He was in the wilderness waiting for God to give the 10 Commandments. Jesus fasted. That's where he overcame the devil in Luke chapter 4. All over the Bible, Nehemiah fasted. Jehoshaphat fasted. Ezra fasted. You're going to see God's people setting aside food in order to say to God, there's some things I need more than my daily sustenance. It's why Jesus said, I am not fed by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Friend, if you need the bridegroom, meaning Jesus, and his presence to intervene in your life, if you are dry and you need God to flood your soul with something different, if you need the spiritual power that can only be given from the throne room of God, you need to set aside your food, and instead you need to go to prayer. Take your lunch hour, take your breakfast, take even your dinner, and say to God, I am setting aside this time to meet with you. Do you know what happens when you do that? God says, I see you. God says, I hear you. And God says, I will reward you when you come and seek after me. Go read Matthew chapter 6. Jesus is saying there comes a time for fasting and prayer. That's what he's telling the Pharisees. However, it wasn't in that moment. It was in the moment of great need that the disciples would cry out. And you know what happened in their great need? God was going to answer. And when he did, he supplied everything they needed. God knows what you need. Come to him like you mean it, and you're going to see his answer coming from heaven.